Hello and welcome to the WeTalk training on ClassIn. Today we're going to be looking at many things, including the ClassIn interface. When you first log in, you'll notice you have your username at the top, that is usually your phone number, and your password on the bottom. You'll also notice this section that says Auto. If you click on the down arrow, it'll come up with a list of servers in order from top to bottom, from fastest to slowest. So choose the top one, and that will get you the best connection with ClassIn. Moving on, you'll be able to see that there are some things on the top of the screen. You'll notice them up here, and up here. The delay is the time that it takes between you and the ClassIn server. The loss lets you know if you're losing any information. That can include your sound quality and your video quality. And the status lets you know how it thinks of it. There is the class number. You don't need to pay attention to that so much as you do this one, the timer, which tells you how long you've been teaching for. Likewise, you have the video recording button. As you can see, this one is white, which means it was not recording, but I currently am recording, so it will glow red. There's also the settings, and then the usual tools. In the settings, you'll see that there are options for the PC camera, the microphone, and the speakers. If I go ahead and click that now, you'll be able to see I can turn my camera off, like so. I can also turn my microphone off, like and I can turn them back on, like that. So what we ask is that you first start off, you go into your class and you start off about 15 minutes early. That 15 minutes allows us the time to make sure that you're available, that you are showing up for class, and that we don't need to call in a supply teacher. Since you are quite early, what you can do is turn your camera off so that you don't have to be seen by everybody, and you can also turn your microphone off as well, so that you don't need to be heard either. Then when it's actually up to class time, you can turn it back on again so you can join class. Likewise, we have our tools. One of the tools I'd like to point out is the cloud. So you see in the cloud, when you open it up, you have the authorized resources. These are the ones that WeTalk provides. You have the My Cloud disk, which will show you the resources that you've personally uploaded. And there is the library, which will show all the resources that ClassIn has provided, namely manuals and such. We have two styles of classes at WeTalk. The first style is what I call the tutoring style. For this style, you'll notice all the cameras are at the top. You can shift them around, you can pull them down, but we leave them at the top for tutoring style. Teacher is always on the far left and the students are on the right. A benefit for this style is that you can have both a PPT file, that is what we have right here, and you can have an EDB file, which is an interactive game. You can upload these or see them all from your cloud disk. So for example, if I go into the 1v4 section here, I can take a look and open up either a PPT or an EDB file. For these files, if I were to upload an EDB file and play that, I can access that by giving the students authority. The crown allows them to move objects. It allows them to have access to these tools so they can draw and play games. Likewise, if I give a trophy, it will show up on the individual screen, letting them know they've got a point. The other style of class we have is a classroom style class. This can have anywhere from 8 to 16 students. And for this style, we minimize the lesson down to the side. We make sure it touches the top, the left, and the bottom walls, like so. When it is doing that, then we open it up so that it gets as big as it can. Now, we don't maximize it because if we do, you'll notice this space on the left and on the right. We don't want that space there. What we want is to be able to use it on the right-hand side for the cameras. So when you're bringing it out, make sure it stays on that left wall and that it doesn't get any bigger. Teacher goes on the top, and like this, you pull the teacher off the PowerPoint like so, and the student would go on the bottom in the same manner. This style of class has a benefit that these students, although they can't get individual points in their sections, they can talk to each other without it crowding the sound on the internet. So the way we give points, I'll demonstrate this with a class setting here. So in the lesson, you'll notice on the second slide, it shows the 4 groups. These 4 groups allow you to know where the students are. In this case, the teacher would be at the top and the students are facing the teacher. So the first row closest to the teacher is group 1. The next row is group 2. The next row is group 3, and the next row is group 4. So regardless of how many students there are, you can tell what you're doing. So for these students, when you give a point, it will come up rather than down, and it will show in the bottom right-hand corner. What I do to keep track of these points, I used to use pen and paper. Now I find it easier to do it on my phone. That way, I can have one hand on my mouse and the other hand on my phone, so I can keep track of points. I can just keep that down by the keyboard, and as I give a point, I just mark it down, and it works. So, for the classroom style class, the first thing that happens is that the teacher teaches the lessons to the students. That means they've already learned the vocabulary and such. Although a lot of time they learn very well on pencil and paper, we're here to work out issues such as grammar, pronunciation, and the speed at which they can talk, because many times they have the time to write down the answer, to think about it, and then write it down. Whereas when we talk, we have to give the answer immediately. So what we're here to do is to practice with the students. We're looking for 3 things. A correct habit of spoken English. That involves 3 parts. 1, that it's correct. We're looking for proper grammar, proper pronunciation, and that they're speaking correctly. Second part is a habit. We do this with practice, and we do it with repetition. And the third part is speaking English. We are looking for spoken English. They can get a lot of written English with their teacher. Here, we are doing spoken English. So, according to Bloom's taxonomy, if we were to take a look at how these fit in, the bottom 2 fit with words, the next 2 fit with sentences, and the top 2 fit with questions, which means we go in order from bottom to top, starting from words, moving to questions. The words section would be the vocabulary section. We may have flashcards, things like that. And then the sentences will include those words. That way they can practice them and make them real. Then the questions are answered by the sentences, which have the words inside of them. Once we have that, we will be able to get them to dialogue with questions and answers. Likewise, they will have the words to make these dialogues real to them and personal for them. Okay? Moving on. The words are review to them. They get to do this review with their teacher, but they also get to do this review with you. The sentences are where we need teachers. This is where they struggle the most, and so this is what we need you to do the most. And questions, I call the easy section because quite literally, for a few minutes, you'll sit there and watch them talk to each other. It is that easy. So, efficiency. We have roughly 4 to 8 vocabulary words, which means an average of 6. Again, we have an average number of sentences of average length, gives us approximately 8 words per lesson. And again, average for questions would be 6. So when we put it all together, we get 20 words per student. And in a class of 8 to 16 students, that gives us a total of 160 to 320 words. Likewise, we're going for habits. So 3 repetitions gives us 480 to 960 words. If you're thinking that's high, that's because it is. For easy numbers, we round it up to 500 to 1,000 spoken words from the students. If you're wondering how we do it, well, we're going to show you. So it starts off with words. If I ask you a question, what is your favorite color? That's 5 words long. And you may answer with blue, 1 word. This isn't very efficient, so we're not going to spend a lot of time here. It's only about 5 minutes. You could spend around 3 to 7, but 5 minutes is what we allot for it. In this time, you are listening for their pronunciation. You want to make sure that they're pronouncing these words correctly and that they're doing a good job. You also want to give lots of points, lots of those awards. Hit that trophy button often to get them energized and active in the class. Also, you're listening for their speed. How fast are they answering you? If they're answering you quickly, you know it's going to be a fast class. If they're answering you slowly, you know it's going to be a slow class, and you can manage your time accordingly. In the sentence section, it's about a 1-to-1. I say a sentence, you say a sentence. I say a sentence, you say a sentence. This time, we're going to try to work our way out. We're going to work our way down to 0. We do this with the PPP method. That stands for present, practice, and produce. Another easy way to say it is I do, we do, and you do, which means that you start off with the teacher alone, move on to teacher and students, and then you finish off with students alone. And this is the most important part here. Unless you're planning on flying to China and being their personal translator for the rest of your life, they're going to need to be able to do it on their own. So we spend about half the class there. It is a lot of time, but we end off with them doing it, okay? If they cannot do it 100% on their own, then you do not move on to questions. You make sure if you're going to take some extra time within the lesson, within your 30 minutes, and you're going to spend it somewhere, you spend it here to make sure that they are doing a very good job and that they've got good habits of speaking English. Also, you're listening for grammar. You want to make sure that their grammar is correct. If it is not, make sure that you help them out with that. And if you spend these first 20 minutes very, very well, and you make sure that their grammar, their pronunciation, and that the fact that they can do it on their own is all in place, then you can move them up to questions. The questions section is very simple. You model it for them, and then they, in their seats, I will draw these 16 students here, will get into pairs. Each pair will talk to each other. And as they do, you'll notice that with a timer, they will all do it at the same time. So that is 8 pairs speaking at the same time for, say, about 4 minutes. You can make that time anywhere, 3 minutes, 5 minutes. It's okay. I find 4 minutes to be a very good middle ground. So during that timer, you have all these students talking to each other. The question will go the one way and then be answered. And then the question will go the other way and be answered. So for every time that you modeled it for them, they will do it twice, which means that will be 16 times the English coming out of them. On top of that, with the 4-minute timer, if you consider there's already one group doing it, that's like getting a bonus 7 groups times 4 minutes is like 28 minutes bonus time. So the efficiency is as if you've doubled the length of your class. So in terms of efficiency, it is very, very wonderful. And also, after that timer ends, each group, that's each row, will present to you individually, one time, which is a bonus 4 times the English. At a total of 20 times the English, that means for their 1,000 words, you only need to say 50. That is definitely doable in half an hour. Not to mention, it's as if you had an entire hour to do it for them. So this works out very, very well for terms of efficiency, for terms of how much you need to say, how much they need to say. It works out very well. But it only works out if they are completely solid on their English up until that point. If they don't know English or their English is poor quality by that point, they will be practicing bad English during this time, and that we definitely don't want. So you make sure 100% that they're capable of doing it on their own and that they're doing a good job of it. Likewise, if I take a look at a class of 8 students, right? They will have the same 8 times the English there and 4 times there. They only needed 500 words. And again, 8, if we just take it around 10 times, which is slightly less than what we're getting, we still only need to say 50. So regardless of the size of the class, you don't need to count the words. All you need to know is if you take the first 20 minutes and practice it well, make sure they know the English, then that last 10-minute section will be wonderful. They'll get all the English that they need in. So What does this look like in a class? Well, on the slides, you'll notice that there is a teaching slide. On this slide, you can see a few different sections. There's a warm-up and lead-in. These would be the words section, so 5 minutes. You can see practice. That would be the 15-minute section. Games could be words, they could be sentences, they could be anything. And then group talk, role play, group activity. If it sounds like it has more than one person, it is part of the question section. And so that's where you spend 10 minutes. You can map out a class. If you look at the top, you'll find right there on the top left, it says practice. That will let you know that this is part of the sentence section. You can alternatively take a look at what the contents of the slide are and figure it out for yourself. Also, you can look on the bottom right and see what slide you're currently on. It gives you two numbers. This is slide 7 of 16. So we know in this lesson there were 16 slides, and it was currently slide 7. So what you can do is plan out your word section. How many slides are in the word section? How many slides are in the sentence section? How many slides are in the question section? Map them out. Look at the time at the top, and the time at the top will tell you how long you've been teaching. And if you know how long you've been teaching and you know where you should be at that time, you know if you are too fast or too slow. And then you can either speed up or slow down accordingly. This is an essential skill that we use for students within China. In China, they have something called face. We would call it your reputation or your pride. If you give them a better reputation, more pride, or more face, they'll give you more enthusiasm and answers. If you hurt them or shame them with your words, you will find that they will emotionally shut down and not talk to you anymore. So, if a student answers first, they're taking a risk. What happens if you say, no, that's the wrong answer, and you make them sit down? They will be shamed in front of everybody. Likewise, what if you praise them? Then they will be uplifted in front of everybody. It is a risk that they take. Because of this, we want to make sure that the first answer is correct. And the way we do that is very, very simple. You ask, who knows the answer? Put up your hand. And when they put up their hand, you don't choose the people who are sitting down with their hands down. You choose somebody with their hand up. They have the least risk. They probably know the answer. And when they answer, you give them a point and everybody else sees that it's safe. At that point, you can start asking for whoever you want. But first, make sure that they know that it's a safe place to be. Likewise, we want to praise them often. That award button doesn't cost us anything to give them. So make sure that you are giving them quite often. If you hear a correct answer, give them a point, okay? In that way, we expect about 40 to 60 awards per lesson. If it's less than that, we're going to start wondering about that student talk time. Are they getting enough time to talk? Also, group help is okay in this style. Because we are not their regular Chinese teacher who is teaching them, we're not looking for can they remember the answer from last class. Rather, we're looking for are they practicing the correct answer. So, if this student gives an answer and it is incorrect, instead of appealing to their individual pride, you can appeal to their group pride. And you ask, do you know the answer? Can you give it to them? So they give them the answer. And if they repeat it, they have practiced the correct English. So you give them a point. However, if they do not repeat it, or the group gave the wrong answer, then you open it up to the next size group, which is the class, and you ask them, can they help? And if they can, then you give that group the point, because they practiced the correct answer. If it needs to go to the class, you should probably have the whole class repeat after you, because that means it's a difficult question. So, the way we do it to save their face, we start off with the individual. If they can't get it, you move to the group. And if they can't move it, you go to the class. And that way, you can keep their reputation intact. So what happens if they don't repeat a sentence or a question? Sometimes you ask you say a sentence and they just nod their head. Yeah, that's right. Or you ask a question and they answer it. Here's what you do. You try getting them. So, try getting Some of you will have already said them. Some of you will be saying, I think he's waiting to have us repeat. And that's exactly it. You give them a piece of the sentence and you wait for them. And if they start repeating with you, great, they're following you now. If they don't, you can go back and you wait again. What I do, instead of leaving my mouse cursor there, it looks like the computer has crashed. We don't want that to happen. So what we do is just keep the mouse cursor hovering slightly over one word. That way they know your computer hasn't crashed, and they also know that you're waiting for them. How do I control a class which is shouting out instead of putting their hands up? There are two ways we do this. One is that we ask them to stand up. You can do this if you want lots of order in your class. The other way is you can ignore the shouts and praise the people doing it right. This is a little more encouraging and you'll get more answers, but you may still get a few shouts. So how we do it, if you see them all shouting out, you say, okay, group 3, stand up, give me your answer. And you'll notice as all the other children sit down, one person from group 3 will stand up and give the answer. If you want to ignore the shouts, what you can do is you can say, I heard the correct answer, but I saw a hand in group 3, you get the point. And the other students say, why didn't we get it? And you say, well, I saw a hand in group 3. Next time, put up your hand. And they will do that. Sometimes, no matter what you say, it seems they don't understand anything. You say, didn't their teacher teach them this stuff? Why don't they understand? Well, first step is to try talking slower. A trick for this is to pretend there is a period after every word. If you read it like this, you can say, students are processing every word. If I say it more naturally, students are processing every word before they understand the sentence or question. Notice how much that slows you down. At the same time, you can try typing as you talk. If you notice, the typing speed will slow you down again because nobody types quite as fast as they can talk. Another thing is to use your body language. If you can touch your camera, you are too close. So back it up. And at this distance, you can say, stand up, please. Sit down, please. Hands up, hands down. I say, you say. With body language, you can communicate across languages. This brings us into how we communicate. Using the traditional VARK system, that stands for visual, auditory, reading and writing, and kinesthetic, we can talk about how we communicate. Communication comes into our brains by seeing, hearing, reading, and watching, and communication comes out from our brains by drawing, talking, writing, or doing. So if I give you one form of this communication, I'm going to type this up here, and I can ask you to spell this for me. And you would say U-D-J-E-H-T. Now, if I asked you what that meant, you would probably not know. First of all, because it doesn't mean anything. And second of all, because I didn't ask you to understand it. If I get you to read something and then spit out the same letters, that doesn't guarantee any understanding. Likewise, a singer can sing a song in another language because they practice the syllables. They don't actually have to learn the language before they sing it. A photocopier can see a picture and draw it without understanding what the picture is. It's just colors. So when we take communication in one form and give it back in the same form, there is no guarantee of understanding. But we do want them to understand. So if we want them to talk, instead of giving it to them by hearing it, we want them to see it and translate it in their brain into talking, to read it and translate it in their brain into talking, to watch it and to translate it in their brain into talking. So if they're going to see, read, and watch, that means we need to draw, which there's the drawing tool. We need to write, which we have a writing tool. That's called the typing tool. We can do using the select and move tool. We can also show using the laser pointer. One of the key things you can do is take a word that you type. You can go to the select and move tool, and move it into your sentence where you put it. Then you can go over it with a laser pointer within the sentence. That way people can see it, they can associate it with the picture, they can read it, and then you can follow together with them to make sure they understand it. There are some other tools that we have, but these four are the most important four that you should be using every class. The other tools you can find in the briefcase. Two of the most important ones from there are the timer, which I demonstrated earlier, and the dice, which is very wonderful for playing games. Last but not least, how do I end a class well? Well, the thing that you want to do is make sure that you acknowledge them for their points. Each group will have a similar number of points because at some point in time, they're going to go group 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So you don't have to worry about the disparity between the groups being too different. If you notice, you say group 1, you got 10 points. Congratulations. Group 2, you got 12 points. Congratulations. Group 3, you got 14 points. Congratulations. And Group 4, you got 11 points. Congratulations. Congratulate each group individually and let them know how well they did. This way, you're encouraging every group. And on top of that, you can encourage the top group, especially and say, Group 3, you are winners for today. Congratulations. Every group will want to be that group that wins. And so there's a little bit of competition, but at the same time, it is not so difficult to reach that point because they all have similar points. Then you'll go to the last slide and you leave because this is how you're going to be remembered. If you don't care about their points and you don't acknowledge them for the effort they put in, they're not going to remember you well. They're not going to want to answer your questions next time. However, if you take care to notice them and to recognize them for what they've done, then they will remember you well next class. Again, thank you for listening and thank you for training with WeTalk. Have a good one.